What is up, guys? It is Dungeon Master Comet here from Adventurers Wanted Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm coming at you today with a new, DM toolkit slash lessons learned because actually this whole thing was inspired by a game that happened about 2 weeks ago. I host games weekly, and actually this is a short video because I'm heading off to a game in about 3 hours from this time of video's posting. So, what we're talking about today is going to go over equipment penalties and bonuses, as well as a little something at the end called as encumbrance, right? So the story is, my group of players are within the wastes of Kestigal. That is the desecrated land, which was at one point, several thousand years ago, the homeland and of the dominant race of the continent back then at the time, which was a gemstone dragonborn, and they were within there trying to reach a specific objective, to basically take down the BBEG, or the big bad evil guy. So they entered this library after having used the travel rules I've posted in a previous video, to traverse the land, and it's happened over the course of several days. So they find this shelter and they clear it out. They go inside and they begin to recognize that they need to take a rest. They need to take a breather. Their two rangers have done a massive amount of work to get them this far, and it's just basically a rest would secure their position, their foothold within this wasteland where no one else, except for the mighty heroes, would be able to traverse. Now, whilst they were preparing to rest and while they were settling down, there were a lot of them. There were like 10 of them. Okay, the rangers begin to pick up something with their primeval awareness when the ground started shaking, and they made history checks through their past experience, and yes, what was moving towards them was not just one creature, but a massive swarm of creatures, a type of aberration known as slug spawn. These minor and weak creatures that basically crawled around the ground and screamed and bit at you, right? The equivalent of CR 1/4, easy to take down, but the problem was there were 600 of them. I'm talking about warfare units from strongholds and followers attacking a group of 10 players. I'm talking about 600 versus 10. Right? And regardless of how powerful you are, the action economy, the amount of enemies you'll have to face, you will be whittled down of your resources. So they didn't want to go through that, right? They were tired and they needed that long rest, and they weren't at full strength. So even with so many weak creatures, there were enough to threaten them. So the rangers said, okay, we're busting out all our spell slots, pass without trace, non-detection, all the works, hide in plain sight, everything, right? So when they buffed up the entirety of the group ended up with something around a +10 to a +15 to each of them, right? And the DC for hiding, for the stealth check, was only a 14. And the slug spawn, they're attracted to stress, but they were already able to, the bard was able to calm emotions. One of them who had, who was experiencing some sort of madness slash stress penalty, right? And they would have passed. All they had to do was not roll a 1 on one of them, but the guy still did. That was a heavily armored dwarven paladin, max legendary item attunement slot guy, right? And why did he have why did he have the 1 roll? It's because he had disadvantage on his stealth check. But why did he have disadvantage on his stealth check? He was hidden behind walls. The army was still moving across them. There were so many of them, and the odds of the horde just checking that one library in particular, that one ruin, are so low. Well, the reason why is because he's wearing heavy armor. And when you have heavy armor, you have disadvantage on all of your stealth checks. So sadly for him, he was sort of the cause of the group encountering this massive fight, where I believe 2 or 3 of them had gone down, and one of them almost died from that, right? And they had applied battle magic, see strongholds and followers, and kingdoms in warfare when that's finally out. Thank you, Papa Bugbear, Matt Koval, for what battle magic and warfare units mean. But they had, through tooth and nail, gotten out of that fight. And there was even a leader of the horde, but they could have that they had to fight, but they could have bypassed all of that if they didn't get that failed stealth check. So there are most people when they see equipment, they think of the items that they have, and yes, that's true. The weapons, the armor, the magical staffs, all the benefits you can get. But there are some penalties to most items in Dungeons and Dragons that give massive benefit. For example, while plate mail is the sole item within the game that can give you a massive boost to defenses and armor class from just one item choice, right? You do get the penalty of getting -1 strength as well as having those strength prerequisites. You do have a penalty of having disadvantage on your stealth checks and having that strength prerequisite. I don't know what's wrong with my tongue today, twisting back and forth. Anyway, so there are a multitude of things like that can apply, but ooh, look at this cute little art. This is the Art and Arcana book, by the way. Didn't have time to prepare proper visuals. But there are a multitude of other things that can affect your game based on equipment. Maximum attunement slots exist. For most classes, well, actually for all classes except the Artificer, you have a maximum of 3 attunement slots that you can apply that. And some items, those are magical items that require attunement. So if you have a total of 3, that maxes out, and you won't be able to attune to others. If you have, say, if you have say curse items, they also come with some benefits most of the time, but also massive penalties. One of which being you can't take them off usually. So, but back to the topic of heavy armor, it's important to apply these equipment penalties to players to make them understand why it would be better for some classes or some characters to choose other items over certain other ones that give huge benefits. For example, I'm sorry for the glare here, it's from the light on my ceiling. This knight in heavy armor would have a disadvantage on stealth checks. I think what I see is chainmail or scale mail there. And whereas the person behind him would not. He uses a polearm or a wide sword, is that correct? Yeah, that's a wide sword. So he would have that would have added weight to his equipment, which may bring about encumbrance. Now, you may be wondering what encumbrance is. Encumbrance is a little rule neatly placed right within the player's handbook about maximum carrying capacity, push, drag, and lift capacity for a character, and that's usually based on their strength score as well as their size. Right. So now we're back on track here. Now, you can have all the heavy equipment you want, but if you don't have the strength and or size to carry all of it, you'll be suffering penalties to your ability checks and your speed. When you are, in order to track what equipment you can and can't carry or what your carrying capacity is, there are simple rules. So there's one base rule and one variant. I tend to use a variant rule. So the base rule is you can carry a number of equipment in pounds, including what you're currently holding at this moment and what's in your backpack, equal to 15 times your strength score. So that if, let's say, for example, your strength is like commoner level of 10, you can carry a total of 150 pounds before you begin to get encumbered. Now, that's a lot for some people, but these are adventurers we're talking about. That's the base rule. If at any point you are carrying more than your carrying capacity, you are encumbered. And if you're carrying double, you're heavily encumbered. If you are, and what encumbered means is you're suffering a -10 penalty to your movement speed, and when you're heavily encumbered, you are suffering a -20 penalty to your movement speed, and you have disadvantage on what I believe are your ability checks and saving throws for strength, dexterity, and constitution, any of your physical-based saving throws. The variant rule is you throw out any strength prerequisites out the window, and basically for armor and equipment, and instead you state your carrying capacity is equal to your strength score times 10. If you are beyond that, heavily encumbered. If you are beyond that by times 2, oh, sorry, I got that mixed up. If you're beyond that, you're encumbered. If you're beyond that times 2, you're heavily encumbered. So what the variant rule is, it drops down how much stuff you can carry in order to add a little bit more realism. So a person with 10 strength would be able to carry only about 100 pounds. You can see, or your DM can eyeball, if he knows enough about the rules, and, well, realistic carrying weights of some items, how much an item weighs within pounds. There's also a nice little list within the player's handbook under the chapter for equipment and adventuring equipment that lists down the exact weight of some items. This is especially useful when making a first level character and you begin to decide on what equipment he's carrying. Because most of the time, when you have a wizard and you're choosing out the starting equipment, sometimes a wizard can't carry everything in his starting equipment, and you are stuck with Encumbrance, right? And basically that high elf wizard or gnomish wizard that you thought had 25 movement speed is walking around with 15, or if he's heavily encumbered, 5. Back to the topic of carry, push, and lift. This is usually double the amount you can carry. Sorry. So for push, drag, and lift, that's a separate aspect, right? Let's say we're using variant rules or even base rules. The amount you can carry in pounds is separate from the amount you can carry via pushing, dragging, or lifting an object, right? If you're just dragging it behind you, pushing it forward, or lifting it up over your shoulders, you can do that an amount equal to double your carrying capacity, if I believe that's correct, within the players as listed in the player's handbook. Based on whether you're using variant or base rules, just double it. That's your carry, push. That's your push, drag, and lift capacity. Now you may be thinking, wow, well, if it's all based on strength, wouldn't gargantuan creatures or huge creatures or large creatures even have benefits? Yes, there are size benefits to having this, to having your equipment, to pushing, dragging, or carrying things. So for each size category, you are higher than the medium size category, you double your carrying capacity. So for example, you are a 10 strength humanoid, you can carry only 100 pounds, or push, drag, and lift up to 200 pounds. If you are a 10 strength for some reason ogre of large size, that is 200 carrying capacity, push, drag, and lift of 400. If you're huge size, then that's 400 carrying capacity, 800 push, drag, lift, right? So that's how size factors in. But if you're small, if you're going small size, you can still carry, push, drag, and lift the same amount as medium-sized creatures, as per the player's handbook. Why? Because magic. But now, if you're tiny, that's when things start getting halved. And usually things don't go beyond tiny size, so it stays around that. So we've talked about encumbrance, carrying capacity, push, drag, and lift, size and how that factors in, equipment benefits and penalties, at least the very basics, as well as some attunement. Well, I think that would be enough for a short video for this week. I plan to make another lessons learned video about the session that's going to be going on in, 2 hours from now as a posting of this video. So I guess we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks so much for listening in, guys. And I'll try to stabilize my posting schedule. But anyway, this was Dungeon Master Comment from Adventures Wanted, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. Hope you guys tune in again.